If this is my second life, I'm not wasting it marrying a man who never wanted me. The words left Ethan Hayes' mouth before he fully understood where he was. A second earlier, he remembered rain streaking across the windshield of a black sedan, the city lights smearing into gold beyond the glass, and the strange certainty that his old life as a mafia boss had finally reached its last page. Now sunlight poured through stained glass windows 30 feet above him. An organ hummed through a packed cathedral, and nearly 300 elegantly dressed strangers stared at him as though he had just announced the end of the world. Ethan lowered his gaze. White tuxedo, white roses, a silver wedding band waiting on a velvet cushion. Beside him stood Adrian Cole, one of the country's most recognizable alpha CEOs, 6 feet 2 inches of immaculate tailoring, controlled authority, and icy disbelief. Memories that did not belong to Ethan suddenly crashed through his mind. Ethan Hayes, 22, Omega, youngest son of a wealthy family, engaged to Adrian for 18 months, hopelessly devoted to a man who treated their marriage like another corporate obligation. The original Ethan had spent years trying to earn one genuine smile from him. Today was supposed to be his dream wedding. Instead, a dead mafia boss had awakened inside his body seconds before the vows. Ethan, Adrian said quietly, his calm voice carrying a warning. What did you just say? Ethan studied him. In his former life, he had learned that people revealed themselves when a plan stopped going their way. Adrian's expression barely moved, but his shoulders had tightened. His right hand rested perfectly still beside his jacket. Controlled, proud, accustomed to obedience. Ethan almost smiled. Apparently, death had given him a sense of humor. The officiant cleared his throat nervously. Somewhere among the guests, someone whispered. Ethan looked toward the nearest exit automatically. 40 feet away, 2 security guards beside the doors. Another near the eastern aisle. His mind had mapped the room before he consciously realized he was doing it. Old habits survived death remarkably well. Then another borrowed memory surfaced. The original Ethan waiting outside Adrian's office for 4 hours just to share dinner, only to receive a message saying the alpha was busy. Ethan felt an unexpected ache that belonged to someone else, and his amusement vanished. Whoever had owned this body deserved better than spending a lifetime begging for affection. I said no, Ethan replied. Adrian stared at him. You pursued this marriage. He did. Adrian's eyes narrowed at the strange choice of words. Ethan calmly removed the engagement ring from his finger and placed it beside the untouched wedding band. Gasps traveled through the cathedral. I changed my mind. For the first time, Adrian's perfect composure fractured. 5 minutes ago, you were ready to become my husband. Ethan met his gaze without lowering his eyes. 5 minutes can change a life. He turned and walked down the aisle alone. Nobody stopped him. Outside, cool autumn air struck his face, carrying the scent of rain and traffic. His pulse finally accelerated. He had no apartment he remembered choosing, no allies he trusted, and barely enough borrowed memories to understand this world. But he was alive. That was enough. A line of black cars waited along the curb. Ethan chose the nearest one with its rear door unlocked, slipped inside, and pulled it shut. Drive. Silence answered him. Ethan looked up. A tall man in a charcoal suit sat across from him, his expression unreadable, his dark eyes carrying the effortless authority Ethan recognized immediately. Not corporate power. Something older. More dangerous. The man glanced at Ethan's white tuxedo, then toward the cathedral steps. Interesting, he murmured. Most runaway grooms call a cab. Ethan's instincts sharpened. Who are you? The stranger smiled faintly. Damian Cross. The name triggered every borrowed memory at once. Mafia King. Ethan slowly looked toward the locked doors as the car began moving. Damian leaned back, studying him with growing curiosity. Now, he said, tell me why Adrian Cole's missing groom just climbed into my car. Damian Cross did not ask the question twice, and that told Ethan more about him than any introduction could have. Men, accustomed to power, rarely repeated themselves. They simply waited until silence became uncomfortable enough for everyone else to surrender. Ethan knew the technique because he had used it himself. He glanced through the tinted window as the cathedral disappeared behind them, replaced by downtown towers shining beneath the gray afternoon sky. I needed a ride, Ethan said. Damian raised one eyebrow. So you chose a car surrounded by 6 men in matching suits. Ethan looked through the rear window. Two black sport utility vehicles followed approximately 30 yards behind them. Another vehicle traveled ahead. Professional formation. 8 men, Ethan corrected. 2 are in the lead vehicle. Something shifted in Damien's expression. You noticed that? Ethan ignored the question. His attention had moved to the side mirror. A dark blue sedan had remained 3 cars behind them through 4 turns. It had changed lanes whenever Damien's convoy changed lanes, never approaching closely enough to appear aggressive. Ethan watched it disappear behind a delivery truck, then reappear seconds later. Your driver should take the next right. Damien remained still. Why? Because the blue sedan behind us has been following since we left the cathedral. The driver glanced into the mirror. Damien did not. He watched Ethan instead. That road leads away from my destination. Then decide whether your destination matters more than knowing who is following you. The silence inside the car changed. It was no longer the silence between a Mafia King and an unexpected passenger. It was the silence between 2 men measuring each other. Damien finally tapped the divider. Right at the next intersection. The convoy turned. The blue sedan continued straight. Ethan frowned. Too easy. Do not relax yet. Damien's mouth curved slightly. I was not planning to. Ethan looked ahead. The city blocks narrowed into older streets lined with brick warehouses and converted lofts. A white delivery van appeared at the next intersection. It had been parked when they entered the street, but its engine was running. Ethan noticed the driver looking toward Damien's vehicle instead of the traffic light. Left, Ethan said immediately. Damien gave the order without questioning him this time. Their car turned left. The white van remained where it was. Ethan leaned back, his pulse steady. Someone had been watching the convoy, but perhaps watching was all they intended to do. Damien studied him for several seconds. Ethan Hayes, he said. 22 years old. Educated at private schools. No military record. No criminal record. No reason to know surveillance patterns. Ethan felt a chill that had nothing to do with fear. You learned all that quickly. I knew who you were before you opened my car door. Of course he did. A man like Damien Cross would know the families connected to Adrian Cole. Ethan turned toward the window, buying himself a moment. He could explain neither the instincts in his body nor the memories of another life. Damien leaned forward slightly. When you entered this car, you checked the doors, the driver, my hands, and every visible exit before you asked my name. Ethan met his gaze. Maybe I am observant. No, Damien's voice remained quiet. You are trained. The car stopped at a red light. Across the intersection, Ethan noticed a man standing beneath the awning of a coffee shop. Nothing unusual about him except the small silver emblem attached to his coat. Ethan's breath caught. A crowned raven. His crowned raven. The symbol Ethan had designed years ago for the organization he had commanded before his death. It should not exist here. It could not exist here. The stranger looked directly toward the tinted window, as though he somehow knew Ethan was watching. Then he turned and vanished into the crowd. Stop the car, Ethan said. Damien's eyes sharpened. What did you see? Ethan reached for the door, but the light changed and the vehicle moved forward. The coffee shop disappeared behind them. His second life had suddenly become far more complicated than an abandoned wedding. Damien watched his face carefully. You recognize something out there. Ethan slowly turned toward him. I thought I did. Damien was silent for a moment, then reached inside his coat and removed a small silver coin. He placed it between them. A crowned raven was engraved across its surface. Ethan stared at it. Damien's voice dropped almost to a whisper. Then perhaps you can explain why you are looking at my family crest like you have seen a ghost. For the first time since waking in this impossible life, Ethan wondered whether coincidence was simply another word people used when they could not see the trap. The silver coin rested between him and Damien Cross, its crowned raven catching the passing city lights. Ethan had created that symbol in another life, sketching the first version on a restaurant napkin years before his organization became powerful enough for people to recognize it without explanation. Yet Damien had just called it his family crest. Ethan forced his expression into calm neutrality. Where did you get that? Damien turned the coin slowly between his fingers. That is not an answer. Neither was yours. A faint smile appeared on Damien's face. You really do not behave like the man who was supposed to marry Adrian Cole today. Ethan looked toward the window. Maybe nobody bothered learning who that man actually was. The answer bought him several seconds, but Damien was too observant to accept it completely. Before he could continue questioning Ethan, the driver spoke from the front. "Mr. Cross, we have company again." Ethan looked into the side mirror. The blue sedan had returned 2 blocks behind them, while a gray sport utility vehicle approached from another street. No one was driving recklessly. No one needed to. The precision was enough. Ethan studied the traffic lights ahead, the narrow streets, and the construction signs surrounding an unfinished office tower. "They are not trying to stop us," he said. Damien glanced toward him. "What makes you certain?" "They are guiding us." Ethan pointed toward the intersection ahead. "Every convenient turn pushes us east. Someone wants your convoy on a predictable route." Damien immediately instructed his driver to head west. Ethan noticed a parking garage entrance approximately 200 feet ahead. "Not west for long. Enter that garage, take the second ramp, then exit through the service lane." The driver hesitated. Damien answered calmly, "Do it." The convoy changed direction. Within moments, concrete walls replaced the crowded streets. Ethan watched reflections in windows, counted exits, and listened to the rhythm of tires behind them. On the second level, he noticed a maintenance gate standing open where it should have been closed. "Keep going. Do not take that opening." The driver obeyed. They climbed another level, crossed to the opposite ramp, and descended toward a service exit. When they emerged onto another avenue, neither suspicious vehicle was behind them. Damien remained silent until the convoy had traveled nearly half a mile. "My security team did not notice the route manipulation until you mentioned it." Ethan shrugged. "They were watching vehicles. I was watching choices." "That sounds like experience." "It sounds like common sense." Damien laughed softly. "You are an unusual Omega, Ethan Hayes." The designation struck Ethan strangely. In his former world, nobody had categorized him by biology or expected submission from him. Here, people seemed determined to decide what he should be before he spoke. "Then stop expecting me to behave like whatever definition you have in your head." Damien's amusement disappeared, replaced by something closer to respect. "Fair enough." His phone rang. He listened for several seconds without speaking, then ended the call. The sedan was registered under a false company. The other vehicle disappeared. Ethan looked again at the silver coin. "And the man outside the coffee shop?" "My people are checking." Damien paused. "But I am more interested in you." The convoy turned through tall iron gates surrounding a private estate several miles from downtown. Ethan expected Damien to continue interrogating him, but instead the Mafia King opened a compartment beside his seat and removed an old photograph. He placed it face up beside the coin. Ethan stopped breathing for one dangerous second. The photograph showed a younger Damien standing beside several men Ethan did not recognize. Behind them was the crowned raven, but written across the bottom in familiar handwriting were 4 words Ethan remembered writing himself years ago: "Never kneel to fear." Damien watched, every change in his expression. "That photograph appeared in my father's private collection 12 years ago," he said. "Nobody has ever identified the man who wrote those words." Ethan stared at his own handwriting from another lifetime. Damien leaned closer, his voice quiet. "Until 5 minutes ago, when you looked at that symbol as if it belonged to you." Damien's words followed Ethan through the iron gates and into an estate that looked less like a home than a declaration of permanence. Gray stone walls rose behind acres of carefully maintained grounds, and every window reflected the fading afternoon light like dark glass. Ethan barely noticed any of it. His attention remained fixed on the photograph in his hand and the 4 words written beneath it: "Never kneel to fear." His handwriting, his philosophy, his impossible connection to a world where Ethan Hayes had never existed. "You said this appeared 12 years ago," Ethan said as the car stopped beneath a covered entrance. "Correct. And nobody knows who brought it here?" Damien stepped out first. "My father knew. He died without telling me." Ethan followed, immediately noting cameras, entrances, and the positions of Damien's security staff. Damien noticed. Of course he noticed. "Still mapping exits?" he asked. "I prefer knowing where doors lead. Most guests ask where the bathroom is." "I am not most guests." Damien almost smiled. Before he could answer, headlights swept across the driveway. A black luxury sedan passed through the gates and stopped behind them. Ethan recognized Adrian Cole before the driver opened his door. Adrian emerged still wearing the dark formal suit from the wedding. Although the controlled CEO who had stood at the altar now carried an unmistakable tension in his posture. "Ethan." Damien's security team shifted subtly, but Damien raised one hand, and they remained where they were. Adrian approached until only several feet separated them. His eyes moved from Ethan to Damien. I have been looking everywhere for you. That seems inefficient, Ethan replied. I left through the front door. Adrian ignored the remark. Come with me. We need to talk. We could have talked for 18 months. Something flickered across Adrian's face. Regret, perhaps, but Ethan did not trust borrowed memories enough to name it. This is not about the wedding. Adrian lowered his voice. Your family has been trying to reach you. There are things you do not understand. Ethan felt Damien watching both of them. Then explain them. Adrian glanced toward Damien. Privately. Anything concerning Ethan while he is on my property concerns me, Damien said. Adrian's expression cooled. He is my fiancé. Ethan removed the ring from his pocket. He had taken it from the altar without consciously realizing it. Now he stepped forward and placed it in Adrian's palm. Not anymore. Adrian stared at the ring as though its weight had suddenly become enormous. You spent years telling me this marriage was what you wanted, and you spent years acting like agreeing to it was a favor. That is not what happened. Then tell me what happened. Adrian finally looked directly at him. Your father arranged the engagement because someone was threatening the Hayes family. Marriage to me gave you protection. Ethan went still. That information did not exist anywhere in the memories he had inherited. Protection from whom? Adrian's gaze moved again toward Damien. The implication was obvious. Damien gave a quiet, humorless laugh. Choose your next words carefully, Cole. I am not accusing you, Adrian said. I am saying the threat came from the criminal world. Ethan studied Adrian's breathing, posture, and eyes. He appeared genuinely concerned, but concern did not prove honesty. Why was I never told? Because your father believed you would refuse the arrangement if you knew. Ethan almost laughed at the irony. The original Ethan had believed he was chasing love. Adrian had apparently believed he was providing protection. Two people standing at the same altar for completely different reasons. There is more, Adrian said. This morning, before the ceremony, someone entered my office and left an envelope addressed to you. He removed a cream-colored envelope from inside his coat and handed it over. Ethan opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph. His composure nearly broke. It showed the same crowned raven symbol, painted across a brick wall, and beneath it were words written in the same handwriting as the photograph Damien possessed. The message was short. The king remembers the dead. Ethan lifted his eyes. Adrian looked confused. Damien did not. For the first time since Ethan had met him, the Mafia King had gone completely still. Where was this photograph taken? Damien asked. Adrian hesitated. An abandoned warehouse on Harbor Street. Damien's face changed. That building belonged to my father. Ethan looked between the two powerful alphas and understood that his runaway wedding had never been the beginning of this story. It had merely placed him exactly where someone wanted him. Damien did not invite Adrian inside, but he did not send him away either. That alone told Ethan the photograph had changed the rules. 10 minutes later, the three men stood inside Damien's private study, a quiet room lined with dark wood shelves and tall windows overlooking the estate. The crowned raven coin rested on the desk beside the two photographs, three pieces of a puzzle that should never have existed in the same world. Adrian stood near the fireplace, visibly uncomfortable inside the home of a man whose name carried more weight in the underground than most corporations carried on Wall Street. Damien remained behind the desk. Ethan stood between them, although he had no intention of becoming the prize in some contest between powerful alphas. Start with the warehouse, Ethan said. Damien's eyes settled on him. My father purchased it 23 years ago through a holding company. Officially, it stored imported furniture. Unofficially, it was where he handled matters he did not want connected to the cross name. And the crowned raven? It appeared 12 years ago. Damien picked up the old photograph, along with stories about a stranger who taught my father methods no one here had seen before. Ethan kept his breathing even. Methods like what? Damien opened a drawer and removed a chessboard. Instead of answering, he arranged several pieces in an unusual formation. Ethan recognized it immediately. It was not really a chess problem. It was a test disguised as one. In his former life, he had used the same formation to teach younger members of his organization how to recognize a false retreat. Damien gestured toward the board. What happens next? Adrian frowned. What does chess have to do with any of this? Everything, Damien replied. Ethan studied the pieces for several seconds, then moved a bishop away from the center. You sacrifice control of the obvious route. He moved a rook next. Your opponent believes you are retreating. Then he shifted the queen. But the retreat creates the only path you actually want them to take. Silence filled the room. Damien's expression became unreadable. Adrian looked from the board to Ethan. Since when do you play like that? Another borrowed memory surfaced. The original Ethan barely knew the rules. Ethan ignored Adrian and looked at Damien. Who taught you this? A notebook my father left behind. Damien opened another drawer and placed a weathered black journal on the desk. Ethan's pulse changed. He recognized the handwriting before Damien opened it. His own. Not similar. Not close. His. Damien turned to a marked page. This strategy is called the Shepherd's Door. Ethan remembered naming it after an argument with one of his former advisors. He had never published it, never shared it outside his inner circle. That name means something to you, Damien said. You have already decided that. I am deciding nothing. I am observing. Ethan almost smiled. It sounded like something he would have said in his old life. Adrian stepped closer. Ethan, I have known you for 3 years. You hated strategy games. You once told me chess made you sleepy. Ethan looked at him. People change. Not between breakfast and a wedding ceremony. The room went quiet again. Damien closed the journal. Adrian is right. Ethan crossed his arms. Enjoy that sentence. I doubt you say it often. Adrian looked irritated. Damien actually laughed, but the sound faded quickly. There is one final test. He opened the journal near the back and turned it toward Ethan. A page had been torn out, leaving only the beginning of a handwritten sentence along the inner edge. Damien read it aloud. Power can buy obedience, but loyalty, Ethan answered without thinking, is only borrowed until a man has the freedom to leave. Adrian stared at him. Damien went completely still. Ethan realized his mistake 1 second too late. Damien slowly reached beneath the journal and removed an old photograph Ethan had not seen before. He placed it on the desk. The image showed Damien as a teenager beside his father. Standing several feet behind them was another man, partially turned away from the camera. Ethan recognized the posture, the coat, and the silver watch on his wrist. He recognized them because they had once belonged to him. Damien looked from the photograph to Ethan's face. That man disappeared 12 years ago, he said quietly. My father spent the rest of his life searching for him. Ethan could barely hear Adrian asking who the man was. Damien never looked away from Ethan. The only name my father ever gave him was the Raven King. The name Raven King should have belonged to a dead life. Yet hearing Damien speak, it made Ethan feel as though the past had reached across 12 impossible years and placed a hand on his shoulder. Adrian stared at the photograph, then at Ethan. You recognize him? Ethan did not answer. Damien closed the study doors and returned to the desk. There is something neither of you knows. He opened the black journal to its final pages. My father believed the Raven King did not disappear. He believed someone erased him. Ethan's attention sharpened. Explain. Damien slid the journal across the desk. Several names appeared in coded columns, but one stood out immediately. Hayes. Ethan felt the borrowed memories inside him stir. His new father, Richard Hayes, had always seemed distant, controlling, obsessed with reputation. Nothing in the original Ethan's memories connected him to organized crime. Your father knew the Hayes family? Ethan asked. Not socially. Damien pointed to a date from 12 years earlier. Richard Hayes purchased 3 companies that once moved money for my father. The transactions happened within 48 hours of the Raven King's disappearance. Adrian stepped closer. Richard built his fortune through real estate and private equity. That is the public version, Damien said. Ethan studied the dates. Patterns emerged almost instantly. 3 acquisitions, 2 shell companies, 1 transfer routed through Delaware. The numbers were disguised as ordinary business expansion, but Ethan recognized the structure because he had invented a similar method in his former life. Someone had copied his system. This was not investment, Ethan said. It was cleanup. Damien's gaze sharpened. Exactly. Adrian looked at Ethan with increasing disbelief. How could you possibly know that? Ethan ignored him and turned another page. A familiar company name appeared near the bottom. Cole Meridian Holdings. Adrian saw it too. His expression changed. That company belonged to my grandfather. Damien nodded. which means the Hayes family and the Cole family were connected to this long before your engagement. Adrian shook his head. My father never mentioned any connection. Perhaps because you were not supposed to know? Ethan said. The words sounded disturbingly familiar. His engagement had supposedly been created to protect him. But what if protection had only been the explanation given to Adrian? What if the marriage itself had been designed to keep Ethan close to two families connected to the Raven King? Ethan suddenly remembered something from the original Ethan's childhood. He had been 7 years old, hiding beneath his father's desk during a thunderstorm. Richard Hayes had entered with another man and spoken in whispers. At the time, young Ethan had understood nothing. Now one sentence returned with perfect clarity. When the Raven returns, the boy becomes the key. Ethan's hands went cold. I was never chosen for that marriage because I needed protection, he said. Adrian frowned. What are you saying? I was positioned. Damien watched him carefully. By whom? My father, for one. Ethan looked at the photograph again. Possibly yours. Damien's expression hardened, but he did not interrupt. Ethan began arranging the evidence across the desk, the coin, the photograph, the journal, the message from Adrian's office. Someone knew I would be at that cathedral today. Someone knew Damien's car would be outside. Someone sent the photograph before I walked away from the wedding. Adrian understood first. You think your escape was anticipated? I think someone built several roads and waited to see which one I chose. Damien looked toward the security monitor on the wall. Then we stopped following their roads. For the first time, Ethan felt something unexpected toward him. Not trust. Not yet. Recognition. Damien did not treat him as someone who needed to be hidden away. He treated him as someone capable of standing at the same table. Ethan looked down at the final page of the journal and noticed a faint indentation beneath the writing. He tilted it toward the desk lamp. A sentence had been pressed into the paper from a missing page above it. He could barely read the words, but they were unmistakable. Ethan Hayes is not who he thinks he is. Adrian stepped closer. What does it say? Ethan read the sentence aloud. Silence swallowed the room. Then Damien's phone vibrated. He checked the message, and every trace of warmth vanished from his expression. My people searched the Harbor Street warehouse. Ethan looked up, and Damien turned the screen toward him. It showed a recent photograph of a locked room containing a single white tuxedo hanging beneath the crowned raven symbol. A card had been pinned to the jacket. Damien read its message quietly. Welcome back, Raven King. The white tuxedo in the photograph bothered Ethan more than the message beneath it. The suit looked almost identical to the one he was still wearing, which meant whoever prepared that room had known details of the wedding before Ethan ever entered the cathedral. Nobody goes to Harbor Street, Ethan said. Damien lifted his eyes from the phone. That was going to be my order. Then it is the wrong one. Adrian stared at Ethan. Someone is clearly trying to lure you there. Exactly. Ethan gathered the photographs and arranged them beside the journal. Which means Harbor Street is the stage, not the objective. Damien's expression shifted with immediate understanding. They want us focused on the warehouse. Ethan nodded. While something happened somewhere else. Damien reached for his phone, but Ethan stopped him with one question. Who knew I was coming here? My driver, my security chief, and the people inside this estate. And who knew about the journal? Damien became very still. 3 people. Adrian folded his arms. Then one of those 3 may be involved. Damien looked toward the study door. My father's former attorney, my archivist, and Marcus Vale. The name triggered something inside Ethan. Not a borrowed memory from Ethan Hayes. Something older. A conference room. Rain against windows. A man placing documents on a table. Marcus Vale. Ethan turned sharply. How old is Marcus? 41. Did he know your father 12 years ago? He worked for him. Ethan's pulse quickened. In his former life, Marcus Vale had been younger, ambitious, and exceptionally good at making himself useful. He had also been present during Ethan's final weeks. Ethan had never known whether Marcus was loyal or merely patient. Where is he now? Damien called his security chief. The answer came quickly. Marcus had left the estate 20 minutes earlier, supposedly on Damien's instructions. Damien had given no such instructions. Adrian exhaled slowly. That sounds like your answer. No, Ethan said. It sounds like the answer someone wants us to accept. Damien looked at him with unmistakable approval. Good. Ethan disliked how much he appreciated that single word. Damien treated his mind as an asset rather than an inconvenience. And after experiencing fragments of the original Ethan's life, that respect felt unexpectedly significant. A notification appeared on Damien's phone. His security system had detected an access request from the estate archive. "Someone is inside," Damien said. They crossed the hall toward a secured room on the first floor. When Damien entered his code, the door opened to reveal empty shelves along one wall. Several storage boxes were missing. No confrontation waited for them. Only silence and one envelope centered neatly on a table. Ethan approached it cautiously. His name was written across the front. Inside was a hotel key card and a note containing an address. "Downtown," Adrian read over his shoulder. "Midnight. Come alone if you want to know why you died." Damien's attention snapped toward Ethan. The room seemed to lose all sound. Ethan realized the mistake instantly. The message did not say why the Raven King disappeared. It said why you died. Adrian looked genuinely confused. Damien did not. His gaze moved slowly from the note to Ethan's face. "There are only 3 people in this room," Damien said quietly. "And I never told anyone I suspected the Raven King was dead." Ethan said nothing. Damien stepped closer, not threatening, simply certain. "Whoever wrote that message believes you are him." Ethan met his eyes. "Apparently. Do you?" The question landed harder than Ethan expected. Before he could answer, another memory surfaced from his former life. Marcus Vale standing beside an elevator, holding that same silver hotel key design and saying, "If anything ever goes wrong, meet me where the city cannot hear us." Ethan looked at the address again. He knew the hotel. More importantly, he knew the room number even though it was not written anywhere on the note. "Room 1908, Ethan whispered. Adrian frowned. "The card does not say that." Damien's eyes narrowed. "How do you know?" Ethan turned the key card over. A tiny crowned raven had been drawn on the back. 12 years separated 2 lives that should never have touched, yet someone had just opened a door between them. Ethan finally looked at Damien. "Because I chose that room." "Then you are not going alone," Damien said. Ethan looked at the hotel key card resting between his fingers. "The message specifically says I should, which is exactly why you will not." Adrian stepped closer to the table. "For once, Cross and I agree." Ethan almost smiled. 2 powerful alphas had apparently decided his second life required supervision. Unfortunately for them, Ethan had spent his first life surviving by assuming every invitation concealed another purpose. "Nobody said I planned to follow their instructions." He placed the card beside Damien's phone. "They expect the runaway groom who entered this estate. We give them someone else." By 11:40 that night, Ethan had exchanged his white tuxedo for a charcoal suit borrowed from Damien. The downtown hotel rose 40 stories above the river, its glass exterior reflecting thousands of city lights. Ethan entered through the main lobby while Damien's people quietly covered the surrounding streets. Adrian remained nearby with access to his company's private security network. Ethan disliked depending on anyone, but tonight was not about pride. It was about controlling information. Room 1908 waited at the end of a silent hallway. Ethan used the key card. The door opened. No one was inside. A lamp illuminated a small table beside the window. On it sat an old tape recorder, a sealed envelope, and another crowned raven coin. Ethan did not touch anything immediately. He checked the room, then the windows, then the adjoining door. Empty. Too empty. His phone vibrated. Damien's message contained only 3 words. "Something is wrong." Ethan heard the tape recorder click before he touched it. A man's recorded voice filled the room. "If you remember this place, then the transfer succeeded." Ethan froze. "Your old life was never meant to end where you thought it did. It was meant to continue somewhere useful." Ethan approached the recorder slowly. Richard Hayes financed the project. The Cole family provided the corporate structure. Conrad Cross provided access to records no ordinary institution possessed. 3 families, 1 experiment, and 1 man they believed could solve a succession crisis. Ethan's mind raced. Damien's father, Adrian's grandfather, his new father, all connected. "You were never chosen randomly, Raven King." Ethan Hayes was prepared as a vessel because his neurological profile matched yours. Ethan stared at his reflection in the dark window. The face looking back belonged to a young Omega, but the eyes suddenly felt entirely his own. The recording continued. There was only one problem. Richard Hayes eventually realized that if you awakened completely, you would discover what he had done. So he arranged the Cole marriage to keep Ethan controlled, observed, and protected from anyone who might trigger the old memories. Ethan finally understood why the original Ethan had been surrounded by decisions made on his behalf. Even his supposed love story had been built inside someone else's plan. Then the recording changed. If you are hearing this, Damien Cross has probably found you. Do not trust him. Conrad told his son enough to recognize you. The Cross family has been waiting 12 years for the Raven King to return. The adjoining door suddenly opened. Ethan turned. Damien stood there alone. Ethan's expression hardened. You knew this room had another entrance. Yes. You knew about the hotel. Yes. Ethan felt something colder than anger. How much else did you know? Damien reached into his coat slowly and placed another envelope on the table. Enough to know that recording was designed to make you distrust me. Convenient. Then do not believe me. Read that. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a letter signed by Conrad Cross 12 years earlier. The message was brief. If the Raven King ever returns, do not claim his loyalty. Give him the choice I never had. Ethan read it twice. Damien stood several feet away, making no attempt to approach. My father did not spend 12 years hunting you, Damien said. He spent 12 years trying to find the people who took your choices away. Ethan looked up. Why? Damien's answer came quietly. Because you saved his family once. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. Adrian. Ethan answered. Adrian's voice was urgent but controlled. Ethan, your father just contacted me. He knows you are at the hotel. Ethan looked toward Damien. What does he want? Adrian paused. He says if you want the truth about who Ethan Hayes really is, come home before midnight. Ethan checked the clock. 11:53. 7 minutes. Then Damien looked toward the hotel window and said the words Ethan had been thinking. That is not an invitation. Ethan folded Conrad's letter and slipped it into his pocket. For the first time since awakening at the altar, he no longer felt like a man trapped inside someone else's story. Good, he said, because I am done following scripts. At 11:54, Ethan made the first decision of his second life that belonged entirely to him. I am not going home, he said. Damien studied him beside the hotel window. Richard expects you to. That is why I will not. Ethan called Adrian instead. Tell my father I am coming. Adrian paused. But you just said, tell him exactly what he wants to hear. Understanding entered Adrian's voice. What are you planning? Ethan looked at the crowned raven coin. I am letting him believe the script still works. Richard Hayes waited at the family estate, while Ethan remained downtown. Adrian quietly redirected his corporate security team toward the Hayes financial archives, and Damien contacted the attorney who controlled Conrad Cross's sealed records. Within 20 minutes, the truth began arriving without Ethan taking a single step toward his father. Richard Hayes had financed an illegal private research program years earlier, convinced that memory patterns could be preserved and transferred under rare neurological conditions. Conrad Cross had initially supported the research as a medical project, then withdrew when he discovered its real purpose. Adrian's grandfather had provided shell companies without telling the next generation what they concealed. Ethan listened as Adrian read the documents over the phone. The original Ethan Hayes had not been created for this purpose, but after medical testing revealed an extraordinary neurological match, Richard had built his son's future around the possibility that the Raven King's memories might someday awaken. The marriage to Adrian had been another layer of control. So I was never protecting you, Adrian said quietly. I was helping your father keep you where he could watch you. You did not know. That does not erase how I treated you. Ethan looked across the city. No, it does not. Silence followed. Then Adrian asked the question Ethan had expected since leaving the cathedral. If we had known all of this yesterday, would you still have walked away? Ethan answered without hesitation. Yes. Adrian exhaled slowly. There was pain in the silence, but also acceptance. Then I hope whoever you choose understands what I failed to. The call ended. Damien remained several feet away. And what exactly did he fail to understand? Ethan turned toward him. That protecting someone is not the same as choosing for them. Damien nodded once. Agreed. By sunrise, Richard Hayes' scheme had collapsed under its own records. Attorneys secured the evidence. The research program was exposed to the proper authorities, and Richard stepped away from control of the Hayes Company's pending investigation. Marcus Vale was located and questioned, revealing that he had sent the messages because Conrad had instructed him years ago to awaken the truth only if Ethan began remembering on his own. He had not been hunting Ethan. He had been testing whether the Raven King had truly returned. Weeks passed. Ethan refused both the Hayes fortune and Adrian's renewed offer of protection. Instead, he accepted an invitation to Damien's estate, where the Mafia King placed 2 objects on the desk between them, the crowned Raven coin and a silver key. "What does the key open?" Ethan asked. "An office." "That is disappointing." Damien smiled. "An office beside mine." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You are offering me a job? A partnership? You barely know me. I know you walked away from a billionaire at the altar, identified surveillance my own people missed, solved a 12-year mystery, and refused an inheritance large enough to buy half this city." Damien leaned back. "More importantly, you disagree with me constantly." Ethan laughed. "That is your qualification for a partner? I already have enough people who tell me yes." Damien pushed the key toward him. "I want someone who can tell me when I am wrong." Ethan looked at the key but did not take it immediately. In his first life, power had meant standing above everyone. It had given him obedience, fear, and eventually an empty room when he needed someone he could trust. This life offered something different. Not submission, not ownership. Choice. Ethan finally picked up the key. "One condition." "Name it." "We stand as equals." Damien extended his hand across the desk. "I would accept nothing less." Ethan took it. Outside the windows, morning sunlight spread across the skyline. Once, Ethan had believed a king needed a throne. Now he understood something better. Sometimes the greatest second chance was not getting your old kingdom back. It was finding someone willing to build a new one beside you.